The webinar today titled Integrated Transportation and Stormwater Infrastructure Project. If you're not a member of ASCE or the Texas section, I invite you to become a member so you can benefit from being a part of this professional association and the gratifying and meaningful volunteer opportunities it offers and the relationships that come from there. Our webinar program is very fortunate today to have three distinguished presenters. Kate Zielke, Fouad Jabber, Dr. Jabber, PhD PE, and Dr. Daniel Lee, PhD PE. Their bios are available on the webinar, but I'll go through these introductions now. And so here we go. Dr. Fouad Jabber is a Texas PE and is a professor and of integrated water resources management extension specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, located at the Texas AgriLife Research and Extension Center at Dallas. He conducts research and extension programs related to green stormwater infrastructure, nature-based systems, stream restoration, and climate change resiliency studies. And he's been doing that since 2002, with funding to his lab exceeding $2.5 million. He earned the 2016 Standards Development Award from ASABE, and I had to look this up, American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. And he earned the 2011 and 2014 Blue Ribbon Awards from the American Society for Horticultural Sciences Southern Region. Kate Zielke is a program supervisor managing floodplain management and public works programs at the North Central Texas Council of Governments, where she has worked for 9 years. Kate is NetCog's project manager for the Integrated Transportation and Stormwater Infrastructure Project. She holds a bachelor degree in journalism from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a master's degree in environmental science from the University of North Texas, and that's my daughter's alma mater, so go Mean Green. Dr. Danny Liu is a Texas PE and a research assistant professor in civil engineering at the University of Texas at Arlington. He earned his PhD in water resources engineering also at UTA. His decades-long research includes surface hydrology and water resources problems for including floodplain studies, hydraulic modeling, reservoir operations and management, water resources planning, water treatment, hydrodynamic simulation, stormwater management modeling, and water quality assessment. Dr. Lee has also played critical roles in the development and efforts and contributions to the field of hydrologic and hydraulic modeling, drainage network modeling, flood forecasting, and flood regulation. His passion is in water to make the world a more sustainable and resilient place for future generations and beyond. With that, let me turn this over to our presenters. Thank you again for being willing to do this. Take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. I am Kate Zielke, and we'll get started on our webinar. So first, a little bit about the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I know some of you are from across the state and outside of our region, but we are a voluntary association of member governments. All of you lives in a council of governments, so we all have this similar role of planning for common needs within our region. Here at NCT-COG, we serve more than 200 counties, cities, school districts, and special districts. Our cities and counties have a population of more than 8 million people. For the Transportation and Stormwater Infrastructure Project, we're really lucky to have this great study team with a great array of participants from the Army Corps of Engineers to our academic partners and the Tarrant Regional Water District. You may have started hearing about this project as early as 2019. That's when it started kicking around, but it officially kicked off in March of 2023. The completion date for our first phase is June 2025, and we have secured $6 million of funding for this phase. So we'd like to give a shout out to those funding partners here listed, especially the Texas Water Development Board, who's been very generous with their funding. So an overview of the project, I'll go through this quickly so I can save a lot of time for our technical presentations. But why do we need this study? What made us start thinking that we needed to pursue something like this? Well, this is a pretty shocking bar chart. Texas is just about off the chart there with the number of fatalities and then also the costs there. The green part of the bar chart is 2017. That included Hurricane Harvey, which is why we're at 100+ billion in damage. But even these other years without that major hurricane, we're showing a significant amount of threat to lives and property in the state. The state is also growing rapidly, particularly our region is growing very rapidly. And here, this gold outline is the study area for the Transportation and Stormwater Infrastructure Project. So this area was chosen because it is less developed than other parts of our region. And the hope was that we could get out ahead of some of the strongest development in order to create the greatest benefit. And this study benefits more than the people and property within the study area itself, because of course, water travels downstream. And so any benefits from this study also will serve the more populated areas in central Fort Worth and Dallas and their surrounding cities. So you can see some metrics here about growth that this area is experiencing. And it is also home to more than 7,000 miles of streams and more than 274,000 acres of 100-year floodplain. So a little bit more about urbanization. As our cities and counties grow in population, if development occurs in the floodplain, this can change the floodplain. So maybe perhaps your property is not flooding today, but some development could lead to changes that would cause it to flood in the future. In addition to development that would affect the floodplain, we of course have increased impervious surfaces as we develop, which prevents stormwater from infiltrating into the ground and increases stormwater runoff. The study also, to some extent, will address water quality challenges. We're not identifying the county or the city here for this development because we're hoping to partner with developers on this project. We don't really want to call them out publicly, but a series of photographs here can give us a good illustration of what happened after a major storm about a year ago. In this photo, this second photo is post-storm. The first photo, of course, is pre-storm, and you can see the water quality in the first photo. You can see what's happening in the second photo and perhaps predict what happens here in this second photo. The water being at the top of the photograph, you can see the water quality impact there from the development. We also face stormwater related challenges as we grow. You know, NCTCOG also does transportation planning, and so we have great data sets related to the transportation network, but there is no region-wide data set related to stormwater infrastructure. Its development is piecemeal, city by city, and lacks connectivity. Also important to stormwater is the NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall estimates. We are fortunate here in Texas to have already received our updates, but this data is required to be used when planning and designing infrastructure. Fortunately, the 2022 Floods Act requires that this data be updated every 10 years, and it also requires NOAA to reach out to local governments and state governments as they develop this data. We also face transportation challenges as we grow. The amount of funding for transportation and for asset management or maintenance of the transportation system continues to grow. This image here is from a Dallas bond program, and you can see sort of the distribution between excellent and good condition streets versus poor, very poor and bare streets there, which kind of tells the story about the need for funding for maintenance and asset management. And as more and more people move to our region, they bring their cars with them. As rainfall increases, all of this affects the maintenance of our roadways. So it's important, if we have urbanization challenges, stormwater challenges, transportation challenges, for all of us to collaborate on this study to develop a solution that is proactive and therefore reduces flood risk and reduces cost. Anecdotally, we're hoping the study will be able to answer these kinds of questions here on this picture. You know, we would like to address the design of transportation infrastructure, such as this bridge here, provide information to communities, their businesses and their residents about safe construction and elevations, and just know how that storms will be affecting our residents and their property. And how we're going to do this is this smart art right here. We are on the top two bars of this right now in terms of where we are on the project. So this is a lot of information wrapped together. So again, we're really happy for our diverse study team to help us address all of these different conditions. And ultimately, our deliverables that we'll produce will include mapping, modeling, and policy recommendations to help cities and counties make decisions to reduce flood risk in the future. So now I'll hand this over to Dr. Daniel Lee for his part of the presentation.
Thank you, Kate, for the introduction, and thank you, Mike, for organizing, Mark, for the introduction. So hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Lee, currently working as a assistant professor in research at FRG here at UT Arlington. I'm going to continue to talk with a little bit brief touch on the introduction and then the disasters from that side, since we're more like tackling from a sustainable way for the future. So as we all know, the billion-dollar disaster is growing every year. The number is increasing in terms of the different climate variabilities. In Texas itself, we're even seeing the hailstorm happen last year. So from the summer, we're seeing more like a rapid change on the flood, drought cycling with more severe flood could happen in the future, and what we can do to adapt that trend with our planning phase. So, Kate, next, please. So in the past, we're seeing extreme storms. So this is the slide we borrow from Jerry Carter as the Chief of Water Resource at CORE. We're fortunate to work this project as a partner with them. So we're seeing more and more rainfall and more extreme storming in the past 10 years. And that trend is forecast to carry on the future, and we're trying to mitigate this specific effect on the ground from a hydrologic standpoint. So in the past, I have the fortune with working with Dr. Nick Fain here at the FRG to come up with flood warning system. Okay, could you move to next one, please? So that from flood alert or flood warning system, it's more like a proactive or adapt to the current situation phase. So we're trying to use observation or observed data, including the weather pattern or rainfall on the stage, using hydrologic or different advanced tools to provide the warning message to the communities. There has been quite a few we've been working with different cities, different partners. However, this is an adaptive approach. But over the years, how can we, this is still needed for a lot of cities where we still cannot have the space to mitigate. But what about the future that hasn't been really developed that could integrate it from a planning side and an integration from not only the hydrologic side, but from a transportation as Kate is describing or introducing for the North Texas region or Dallas-Fort Worth area. Next one, please. From our region, as Kate introduced, so I'm going to be specifically on working with on the west side, which is the first phase of this project. So we're currently working with the Corps, starting with some pilot area investigations. So excuse me, with all this detailed HOC 12 or HOC 10 level of watersheds. So from our study region, we're gonna take a look at each individual of them for their projection for the future, not only from the hydrologic parameters, but also from a land use perspective and along with the transportation. So why are these three hash areas? Next one, Kate. Thank you. So the transportation layer or transportation network gonna expand dramatically for adaptation for the future planning and for the future population to help us move around to make this, day-to-day life more easier or to help the city or region to grow. So the red line here is a recommendation for the future planning based on the input from the COG transportation planning site. So we are trying to see, all right, what if we can combine this transportation planning phase with the hydrologic analysis to see if we can come up with some mitigation way or planning side to help us to avoid the mistakes that happened in the past. So not only from the transportation side, but also from the land use side. So we're also working with, next one, please, Kate. We're also working with the land use side from the COG that provided us with the projection land impervious data for not only 2045, that along with the transportation planning, but even further advanced to 2070. So from this data set, we are using a machine learning combined with remote sensing data set to come up with what the transportation / the land use impervious are changing in 50 years. So from three hash area, that's going to be serving as the potential pilot study area. We're seeing on the Bridgeport, that's serving as the transportation side with major highway expansion, but also from the Maris Creek side, which is down there in the south hash area, that's going to serve as a major population / impervious change. So this is a detailed 30 by 30 meter grid that we're taking the forecast on. And from next one, Kate, we're zooming in for the specific in terms of the impervious change. So we can see for the Maris Creek side, that's quite a lot in terms of the detailed impervious change perspective in terms of each grid size. So not only we're looking at the grid size, but first we're going to integrate that with the basin average impervious change over the years. So from 2020 to 2070, we're seeing around 20%. Next one, please. We're seeing around 20% of the change for the Maris Creek site. And even though it's not showing a significant change on this Bridgeport, however, this approach itself for land use projections are also limited. We always know that it's never easy to ideal to forecast the future. So we're also evaluating other data sets or other tools that help us to predict the land use perspective for the future. And for those two areas, we're taking a look at or leveraging the existing 1D, 2D BLE model from the Corps, which is also the huge or significant partner within this study. Next one, please. So the existing study that published by the Corps for a watershed assessment analysis that has been available for the Trinity or for the Upper Trinity region, which is published there at the Inform website. So what the Corps are taking a look at is the current perspective for their hydrologic impact, or how does the flooding happen now while we're leveraging the existing models updated with the future parameters of the land use, and to see how we can accommodate the growth without further changing or mitigation effect. So this is a brief introduction over a lot of the words. Apologize for this, but it's very enhanced detailed analysis. So next one, please, Kate. this is the results or one of the published flooding layer for the current condition for the Bridgeport and or opportunity regions. So as we know, the pilot area, one of them is the Bridgeport, which is actually right in the center of the regions as the 1D BLE model, and the 2D BLE model, which is going to be released later this year for us to work on for a different hydrologic analysis part near the forward center region. Next one, please. So on the north side for the Bridgeport, this is a existing or published water depth layer that's for us to use or for us to leverage for the current 1D model in this specific region. So what is the difference between 1D BLE and a 2D BLE? Next one, please. So for 1D BLE, we're taking a look at the detailed bathymetry or cross-sectional data and input that leverage with the existing HMS model and the HACRAS 1D model to mitigate that with the future planning in terms of the improvements of change. So for Bridgeport, we're having limited by its 1D capacity, but for the Maris Creek, we're lucky to have a detailed 2D hydrologic model, which using a renal mesh grid with specific area to see how the inundation could be impacting for the different area. So provide us with more flexibility if we're going to spatially allocating the different pond or different mitigation impact with the integration of the bridge or with different other stormwater management practice. Next one, please, Kate. Right, so this is the pilot area bridge coming back with the 1D BLE in terms of the Bridgeport. And the next one is the 2D model for Maris Creek. Okay, could you move next one? Right, so combining with a land use 2045 projection. This is animated. Could you click next one, please? And with different pond options. Next. And we're saying with the input from Dr. Fouad's menu in terms of how we want to utilize the regional or the local skill or community-based pond, how we can integrate that with the transportation layer to provide with a reasonable approach or optimization approach, which leads to the next slide. You can advance several, so this is, thank you. So first to recap, what we're gonna plan out is to receive the updated HMS and the REST model to modify that for the optimization. Conduct the GIS-based suitability analysis for the manual traditional and green infrastructure options, and set up the variables and initial data for both the traditional and green infrastructure options, and to determine the objective functions with the constraints that emphasize on both downstream and environmental conscious solutions. Finally, to develop an around script that incorporating both from the optimization techniques and algorithm with both from 1D and a 2D options. So we've been doing this starting as the initial study area, and hopefully we can present some good results once the initial phase or pilot area study area is done. While we're using the optimization for this, we're still coming back with other two perspectives in terms of the future on the site, which is related to the TSI project. Next one, please, Kate. So coming back with this Texas storm study, it's related to the extreme storm that we're not only combining from looking at from land side, which is the land use from HH, but also we're looking at from a climate side or how the past storm data are providing us on the guidance of how to divide or how to further to design the future standard of the rainfall. So this is a collaborative effort are ongoing related to TSI with the input or funded by the Army Corps of Engineers. Another study that we're looking at is also for a inflow frequency curve that take a look at the land impermanence change towards the inflow frequency for the reservoirs in North Texas region as well. Next slide, please. So for this, we're combining a different input to see how the land is impact or changing or towards the reservoirs to help us further mitigate this floods for the downstream communities. With that, I will conclude my slides and move to Dr. Fouad for our green infrastructure side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes. So as you saw with Dr. Lee's presentation, there's a lot of work that's going to be done to look at reducing flooding as a result of future potential construction. So and that data actually is going to be integrated in the model that they're developing. So within their model, we're going to be working on ways to reduce flooding from the newly constructed area. So the first thing we're going to be doing is really identify the hot zones. Where are the potential for flooding? So one of the ways we do this is by using a GIS stacking model. Basically, we bring data. This is for current conditions. We have slope, elevation, soil, land use, NDVI, which is an indicator of vegetation density, flow accumulation from GIS. We rank these from 1 to 5. We give different part or different maps, different weights, and combine them all together and come up with a red area for flooding. This can be easily done for current condition, or most of this data is available from USGS websites, but also we will be looking with the maps that Dr. Feng's team is developing to do this for future conditions. And as a result, we've done this study for Denton County. This is what you see here on your lower left. This is all of Denton County. It was done in GIS and put in a story map, which means that even when you can access it on the website, and then you can zoom in to see regions. So if you're in the city of Denton and you get that big county map, it might be hard to identify in your area, but you can zoom in to the city and see where are the hot areas for flooding within the city. And that's the next picture here on the right, where you can see the northern part of the city looked like it's more prone to flooding. So that is the first step in reducing flooding, is identifying these these areas that are hot zones for flooding using a GIS stacking model. Next slide. So the other thing is that we're not, as you can see, the transportation stormwater infrastructure project is for this area that's going to be developing. And again, Dr. Feng's team, we saw one of the graphs where it showed the potential future modeling as it starts going towards the west and the northwest. What we want to look at is if you can see the graph here by Gomez, it's a paper that shows that the green is the pre-construction conditions, the blue is the current post-construction condition, and the dotted line is what we expect the flooding from high extreme events to be after the impact of climate change. And the red line here shows the capacity of the stormwater networks that were developed for that blue line in most cases. And so you can see that we're going to be way over capacity, and changing stormwater network is going to be very, very difficult in cities, because these are capital projects that can cost millions or billions of dollars. So for this study, in order to understand what can happen in the future, and with Dr. Feng's team's contribution on future land use, we're going to develop from using the UN ensemble modeling. The CMIP6 is the latest one that has been available. We're going to develop extreme events data for the 2050 and 2070 using that UN developed model. And then we're going to run these models with the newly developed land use maps and see what is the potential for flooding, what is that dotted black line that is for our area. And from there, we can start looking at practices to reduce this flooding. Next slide, please. And so we're going to look at traditional flood control, like Dr. Fang mentioned, and that's mostly the core and Dr. Fang's team. My role is to look at the nature-based solution and green stormwater infrastructure. And so as we develop all this data, we're going to first develop basically a booklet, a menu of all the potential large regional scale GSI and nature-based systems that are available to developers, to cities to use, and for us to model. So we're going to develop the system and see how these products can impact flooding in the area. One of the things that we want to focus on is that this is a model project for the nation. Well, it's being done in the western and northwestern part of the COGS area. The goal is that the document is easily transferable to any area in the United States so that they can follow at least the methodology we did to do it. So whenever we're talking about this menu, we're going to be looking at things that apply everywhere. We might have certain practices that are localized, but we will indicate that. So scalability and transferability of the practices that we're going to mention is going to be key in developing of this menu. And once we have that, we can specifically focus on the red areas that we developed in our GIS stacking model. Not only that, we also are going to use the prioritized area that the Dr. Fang's team and the core will be developing, and we will focus on these areas and do more serious modeling for these specific areas. Next slide, please. So just for those of you who are not necessarily familiar, I'm pretty sure that most of you are, the blue-green infrastructure is a new term for green stormwater infrastructure. You can still use the other one. It's fine with everyone. It's just that some people are adding blue because rainwater harvesting is included, porous pavement is included, and it doesn't really have any green material in it unless you paint them green. But blue-green infrastructure is rain gardens or bioretention areas. This is an example here at the Dallas Center on the top right of the slide is a bioretention area that we have at the Dallas Center. Green roof and then permeable pavement. This one is green actually, but most permeable pavement that we use, and we have here a couple of demonstrations at the center also, are pervious concrete or interlocking concrete pavers that can be used to increase infiltration. Next slide, please. So green infrastructure can be integrated within a development. That's actually its superpower. The superpower of green stormwater infrastructure is that it doesn't take extra space. It can double as typical landscape. It can double as the median in parking lots. It can double as the green space on the side of your parking lot. In this example, there are two bioretentions that I designed and supervised the construction of for the city of Dallas. This is a new park in South Oak Cliff. It's called Renaissance Park. And the southern part of the park, which looks like typical landscape as you see in the pictures, is actually a bioretention area. It's designed to capture the rainstorms from the park up to the runoff from 3 to 4 inches of rainwater will be captured in this to bioretention, and then what overflows will go through a pipe to Alice Branch on the right. So that's what we're looking for. These practices that integrate within the development, don't need extra space like detention pond, and can have double uses like maybe a soccer field at a bioretention. Next slide. So in order to understand whether green infrastructure has an impact on flood, we did a study in the city of Dallas that we will probably replicate for TSI. to see what's the impact on green stormwater infrastructure on flooding. So historically, green stormwater infrastructure or blue-green infrastructure has been used as a water quality practice, but we know that it does capture a volume, and it's only a water quality practice if you put enough green infrastructure just to capture your water quality volume as defined by your city or by your stormwater manual. But in reality, if you put enough of these where all over the city, you can come up with a significant reduction in flooding. And we wanted to test that for the city of Dallas. So we did model as much as we can from the city of Dallas using the EPA SWIM model to look at the impact of flooding. The study was funded by the Nature Conservancy, and we got help from the city, of course, and from the Trust for Public Land in the process. Next slide, please. So here's the results of our study. We modeled the city of Dallas, and we modeled current condition and identified the sub-watershed that flood due to an undersized stormwater network for the 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storm. And you can see that as you go up in the storm, more watershed get flooded. The color indicates the seriousness of the flooding. Light yellow is minimal flooding, while dark red is very high flooding. And if you look at the here, even for the 2-year storm in Oak Cliff and in Joe's Creek, we get some flooding, but then it becomes completely widespread as we get the 100-year storm. So when we went in and we put a bunch of green stormwater infrastructure in medians, we put rainwater harvesting on every house. We put a rain garden in houses. We converted the 10% of parks, like the picture I showed you previously, to bioretention areas. And then we ran the model again, and we got significant reductions in severity as well as in number of watersheds. And even in the total volume, we reduced the runoff by around 35% for the 2-year storm, down to 17% for the 100-year storm. This is the volume of water that was reduced. So we clearly didn't completely resolve flooding, but actually we ran the model for gray infrastructure. We said, what would happen if the city just makes its inlets and pipes bigger? And with the limit on the size of the pipe that we could use, we found out that even changing just the gray infrastructure could actually, with maximum reduction for the 2-year storm was 40%, and it was a little bit less in the 30% for the 100-year storm. So in reality, a combination of this gray and green infrastructure is what we need to look for in these systems. And but the key that we found, and you can see the report, there's a PDF link on the top, and then there's a Journal of Hydrology paper on this study. The key that we found is that green infrastructure, as compared to pipe and capital projects, is 1/7 to 1/10 of the cost. So what cities should do is consider green infrastructure first. Go and put bioretention areas in your parks, in your medians. Donate rainwater harvesting systems to buildings, to schools, to large box stores. All these can help a lot at a fraction of the cost of having to go and change the pipes. And that's significant in climate resiliency, because as these 100-year storm increase in size, or even the 2-year storm increases in size, the fast way to start reducing the impact of climate change is by doing green infrastructure at a fast construction rate. It takes 1 or 2 days to put a bioretention, and you at a cheaper cost, before you have enough concern that you need to do a full capital project and change the stormwater network system. Next slide. So one of the things we also want to, just so that you consider, we know we're going into this area that is mostly rural, and most of what we suggest through this project and through the COG is going to be voluntary. And so while we're pretty sure, because we've seen high luck in convincing all different cities in adopting green infrastructure, we do want to account for the potential of lack of adoption within the cities and up in the watershed. So we're going to look also at practices that can fit within the riparian zone of the streams, and with the goal in mind is reduce the stormwater flow and volume and guarantee that these practices stay green. So we are looking, while developing our menu of green stormwater infrastructure, at practices that will be beneficial for the owners, for the city, maybe parks, soccer fields, that can guarantee to become permanently stay as green space and not be constructed on. At the same time, they double as a stormwater practice or best management practice. And so we will be looking at these common green spaces within the riparian areas that will be included in the menu that Dr. Fang and Dr. Lee and their team will be using. A lot of our model that we're going to use, SWIM or SWAT, will going to be working with the Corps and Dr. Fang to develop these linking of models so that the output from my models can be used in their optimization model and in HEC-RAS and HEC-HMS as a result. And with that, I think I give it back to Kate.
Thank you, Dr. Jabber. So just a couple more slides on what we've accomplished so far with the TSI study and what we're up to next. So we have conducted 2 rounds of meetings in the study area. So that's four meetings per round. We have also had our first meeting with our technical advisory group. We have sought data from our communities, and we're going to continue doing that. We've conducted a couple of workshops for this study, one related to green asset management, led by the US EPA and the city of Denton. And then COG itself recently conducted a webinar about our existing programs that are relevant to TSI and that can already help our communities reduce their flood risk. We have made 2 visits to some of our smaller cities that are facing growth, and we've been able to see the flooding related challenges they are facing. This image here is where we were able to get feedback during those sub-area meetings with stakeholders in the study area on what deliverables they think would be most valuable for their communities. And then what we have up next, we do have another technical advisory group meeting. This is taking place on July 12th. If any of you are out there listening, would like to participate in this technical advisory group, please let me know and we'll be happy to send you an invitation to that meeting. We also will have our first steering committee meeting coming up. So this is a meeting of elected officials and city managers to help us build support across the region for the project. Dr. Lee discussed the pilot study that is underway in the Bridgeport area. We've been conducting a literature review and just continuing to do community outreach and working on these subject matters that our other presenters have discussed related to land use and impervious surface and hydrology and hydraulics, and a number of presentations just like this one that you're seeing today. So I think we are at the end of our presentation and we'll be happy to field any questions that you have.
We do have a question, and I see Fouad is actually typing up an answer for Mr. Khan. Let me go ahead and state it out loud. Is there any plan to do a study to find correlation between water consumption rate of trees during and after a rain event for different kinds of soil? This study may help to rethink about the detention rate in a certain area.
So since you read it out, I'll stop typing and
Just
answer.
for everyone's benefit, go ahead and address it verbally. Sure.
So in this project, we don't have any funding to do experimental work, but this is definitely something we'll look into during the literature review. And if we see that the literature review is indicating that there is an impact on flood reduction, we can add a layer in the GIS stacking model that I showed that focuses specifically on trees rather than NDVI and vegetation index in general. But so that then would integrate that in the way we look at risk zones and hotspots.
Yeah, I would like to add to Dr. Jaber's response. Actually, within our group ourselves, we're currently working with a project funded by Dallas Fort Worth International Airport that's currently looking at the the tree layer, the interception and evapotranspiration effect from the trees, and further in terms their retaining and the detaining effect in the soil infiltration perspective. So there is an ongoing study right now for this perspective, and hopefully we can get some papers out when project is finished. So we're looking at 2 to 3 year timeline. Great question.
All right, I see possibly another question here. No, it's the same one. Does anybody have any other questions? Feel free to insert into the Q&A. We have a few minutes. Okay, seeing no other questions, I have I guess a question or kind of a seed for a discussion here. I'm a bit of a newbie as far as the coupled model intercomparison project, the CMIP 6 you're referring to. And as I understood it, if you could restate this in your way, that's a key tool you're using to establish some of these flood risk areas. Do you directly run the inputs for forest and unforest climate effects in that model, or how exactly does that work? I guess that's my question.
Which model is that? Is that for Daniel?
It's for whoever would like to address that question.
Dr. Jaber, it's referring to the CMIP 6 model that you're using to look at the climate change.
CMIP 5, okay. I got it now. I'm used to calling it CMIP 5.
Well, I don't think a lot of the people in the audience might even be familiar with the acronym. So
yeah, it's actually a complex acronym that no one knows. That's why we just say the letters. It's basically the United Nations have, through their IPCC, developed an ensemble modeling for future climate change. And that's a combination of 20 to 30 models that they run all in parallel. And they take the average result of these models, and that's what they present to the public as potential future impact of climate change on temperature, rain events. The rainfall data specifically, they've been developing various versions, and these are what these CMIP are. The MIP 5 was the one that we used up to last year, and then they just released the CMIP 6, which also it's a twist on some of these models, and really you can go and get the specific data for the specific model. So when we do this work, we look at the result of these models on the Texas area, and we eliminate the ones that clearly are showing erratic data or complete outliers. And that would give us a number of these models that we can take the ensemble modeling for. The other thing that I didn't mention, they do 3 forcing scenarios. They have, they call them RCPs. Again, don't ask me what the RCP stands for, but they have they call them RCPs. They have a 4.5, a 6, and an 8.5, I think. So, and those are how much impact are we going to get from climate change? Basically, how much change in the energy is going to force what type of scenarios. And 4.5 is the least change, with 8.5 being the maximum change. Unfortunately, since they started developing these models in 2015, so from 2015 to 23, our environmental data, as in temperature and precipitation, has been following the 8.5. So for this study, we probably will stick and use the RCP 8.5 data. We're going to have to do, so the data they give us for precipitation is in daily data for the next 50 years. So when you download the model, it's going to give you, this is what we predict on January 1st, 2024, et cetera, to January 2nd. And then it's all that data. So we will, when you get that data, it's also large scale. And so it gets, for example, when you look at the Dallas data, it includes all the way to probably mineral wells or even beyond, which actually dilutes that data. And so you can downscale the data to focus on Dallas, which has higher rainfall than that area. So that's one thing. We downscale the data, we correct for bias, and then we run this, like you learned in your hydrology classes, hopefully, we run this through extreme event statistics and produce the 25, 50, and 100-year storms using one of the methods that are typical to develop extreme event modeling from that very long time series of precipitation.
It's a complicated subject. Thank you for the answer. We have another question from the audience. Are there any studies or information available on how recharge wells could be used either on a large or small scale to mitigate runoff?
So that's all, and I'll let others answer too if they have an answer. But this is a topic that came out in our studies, and we will be looking at a storage and recovery system as storage and recovery areas, I think they're called, which you do pump water deep into the groundwater aquifer, and then you can repump it back up at later dates. So that's something. There are people, we don't have an expert in the team that specializes in this field. There is potential for us to look. There's faculty that have done this type of work. There's a consultant that have done this type of work, and we might reach out to them as we get to that point.
I see no further questions. We're pretty much on schedule here. We would have time for one more if it comes in, but I'll go ahead and start wrapping this up. If one appears, then I'll certainly field it. Kate, Fouad, Daniel, excellent program, just excellent. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. I'm sure our audience got a lot of continuing education out of it.